What's good, y'all? Hey, it finally dropped, so I know I've seen it already. But the West Huff interview with Joe Rogan, Wes brought it. I thought he would, and Joe was I think he was kind of shook at the end. I think it's going to make him go out and really research and find out more about more about Jesus, and hopefully he comes. I really really do. I hope anybody finds their way to Jesus Christ because He is the way, the truth, and the light. So, but as a part on the video, I kind of want to check out. They were talking about the universe, the Big Bang theory, and so let's get. I want to get into a little bit of this clip though. You guys check it out. I'm going to jump to a couple of different parts of it too. So
they were trying to push it back to 22 based on the existence of galaxies. And people are pushing back against that, and there's a lot of debate about that. But the bottom line is, all of it is too many numbers for your brain to even register.
Yeah.
That however many billions of years ago, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was something. And Terrence McKenna had a great line that said that science requires one miracle. The Big Bang.
Totally.
It requires a miracle.
Well, I always say that when people ask me about, the miracles in the Bible. Yeah. And I say, well, if the first miracle happened, if everything, nothing became everything, right, then, Jesus turning water into wine.
That's an easy one.
Well, yeah.
That's a party trick.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is nothing compared to the birth of the universe, but we're convinced at the creation of the universe, and we're very skeptical at other miracles. It's very odd.
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense. Like the Big Bang, they're skeptical. You can say a particle exploded and it happened, and the world was created, but you can't see an intelligent design in that. I don't get it.
Very odd.
I think there's an inconsistency there, and you do see when the Big Bang is first hypothesized that there are individuals who are uncomfortable with that sounding like in the beginning, because before that the idea was that the universe was eternal. Yeah. And if you propose a point in time where everything starts to exist, well, and you see some of these people are pushing back on it. They say things like, well, that sounds too religious. That sounds like a beginning point in time. Right. And at that point, if there's a Big Bang, you have to figure out, okay, well, what's the Big Banger?
Right.
And that's ultimately it's a metaphysical religious question. How did that thing get kicked off?
Brian Cox was explaining to us that there was an actual environment that existed pre the Big Bang. Don't they call it the environment?
How do they know that? You know what I'm saying? How do they know that? They think these particles. Yeah, I get it. You can look and science will explain but that's man's theory on how things were created. So it's it's almost like man against God, and I think that's where we're going, and we have always been going. Joe talks about in a little later. He talks about it's hard to believe, and if Jesus would come back today, what would that look like? Because of in ancient times, miracles were so it's oh yeah, they're an Egyptian, they're from Egypt, so it's just another magician, because they've seen miracles. And it's kind of like if you go to third world countries today, they have miracles happen every day over there. It's nothing new. They pray and things happen because they're so closer to God, because they haven't let corruption of technology and things like AI, which how I feel about AI is the evilness of AI, but it hasn't let things like that corrupt them. So they still have that closeness to God, whether they know it's their deity is God. Still, they're close to Him. That's why they see miracles happen all the time. So yeah,
is that what the term of it is?
Is this like Lawrence Krauss having a definition for nothing?
I don't know.
It's not nothing.
I don't know. It was just what are you even saying? And then there's Sir Roger Penrose, who thinks there's a series of these things that happen, and that it's just this constant birth of universes and death of universes and birth of new universe, and it's Big Bang, expansion, heat, death, contraction, Big Bang, but we're almost that's too much. I don't want to. I can kind of wrap my head around 14 billion years. I can't wrap my head around eternity.
In theology, it's often described as the difference between understanding and comprehension, which my wife tells me are synonyms, and that's nonsense. But the idea is you can understand eternity as a long point in time.
Right.
You can't comprehend it.
It's like numbers. You can understand.
You can't comprehend it because you don't understand living forever. It's eternal. Like it never stops. It's like it goes on. But if you think about it, the earth is eternal. Like it's going to be here long after we're gone. It had a beginning and it has an end that God created. So it's eternal. Whether we're here on this planet and like or not, it's still eternal. So it goes on forever, whatever inhabited. So that's what I feel like you imagine that being in heaven. Like it's eternal. You don't even know, like there's no concept of you dying. Like you know that the body, the physical body gets old and it dies. You see it age, but there's none of that. There's no, you know, it's whatever you are. So you don't get sick, you don't die, you don't grow old. It's like it's eternal, and you just keep living day after day. But we think like as here, like, oh, we got to go to work, we got to do the things of worldly that there's none of that. We just live like and have fun and family that's there, the ones that made it. So
yeah, how many zeros are in 14 billion years?
How much water's in the ocean?
Right.
I can comprehend, like, it's like, that's a lot of water.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about like tens of thousands of gallons, I'm like, lost me.
Yeah, I don't really know what that looks like. I kind of do. My brain's not set up for that. Yeah. Which is part of the weird thing about people, is that our brain is clearly set up differently than every other creature that exists. And if you have, if evolution is the only thing that created us, it's just evolution, how the fuck did we get so far ahead of everybody else? Yeah. I mean, not even just, and we're the doughiest, like weakest, softest, but also the smartest. Like we gave up that. That was the trade-off. And some,
because the Bible answers that. It says the generation will become weaker but wiser. Everything explains in there. You just have to find it.
Somehow or another, by evolving into this particular form, we figured out a way to uniquely change the environment in ways that no other creature has even come close to.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that there are certain things that we think of in terms of like unexplained phenomena that we'll accept because we have some sort of a scientific definition of what this unexplained phenomena is, like the Big Bang.
Yeah, because it's man's version. It's man's version of explaining it. So if you see something, you explain scientific is man's versions of explaining things. So that's why we're like, oh yeah, okay, well it'll be that. Because a lot of people don't want to think that there's something beyond that realm of just man,
I mean, and you can say that there's theories. It's not completely unexplained. They kind of get it, but you kind of don't. Something that's smaller than the head of a pin that becomes the entire universe that we say is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And just to say that just happened, and you don't really. I know you don't want to say you don't know, but you really don't know. There's no way you can know. It's not really possible to know. There's no like working theory where you can convince me that the whole universe gets compressed into something smaller than the head of a pin and then instantaneously becomes everything that you see.
Well, I think that's why you see natural materialism being woefully inadequate to really explain the ultimate worldview questions that we have.
Just the universe itself, right? Just what we don't know enough. Maybe we one day will. Maybe these, sentient AI systems that we're going to create with quantum computers are going to be able to figure things out in a way that we can't. But at the end of the day, you have one miracle. You have the Big Bang. All of science agrees this happened. That is so much crazier than anything that any religion is proposing, that it's so interesting to me that we say we have echoes of the Big Bang. There's, radio echoes. Yeah, but also, if a miracle did take place, like let's assume that there is actually a higher power that occasionally interacts with human beings. And if a miracle did take place and you were there, you don't have a camera, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a pen, you can't write things down, maybe you can't even read. And you have this thing that...
Yeah, this is my thing here too. Sorry, keep stopping the video. This is my thing. Some people, they don't understand. It's like they talk about a higher power and they talk about God, but you forget the other side that's been played here to be played against him at all times. Why do you think we're creating artificial intelligence? Because he wanted to be God. So he's playing that, and the whole world is his playground. Like, it irritates me when people get mad at God and say, why do these things happen? The devil does these things here because it's his job. It's his job to flip everything up, to be the opposite of God. So it's like he's trying to be that, but he's the total opposite. why we have these things now, why we're trying to create humans, why we're artificial intelligence. This is just try to get smarter. It's almost like a God complex. It's like we got to play God. First it was like they used to say doctors try to do that. Like play God because they're saving lives, not knowing that it was God really the ones that's saving people. But it's a whole concept of that. So you have to look at the other side. It's always a constant battle, and it has been since the beginning of time, even throughout Scripture. So it's. I mean, that's my point of view on it.
It happens to you, and this thing changes the course of human history. This thing changes the direction, the ideology that these people subscribe to, and the moral and ethical structure that they live their life by. It changes untold billions of human beings from that point on.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
That in itself, even if this is just a revelation without a divine interaction, that's a fucking miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that it was created at all. Like the whole idea that Christianity, when you're saying that the book of, was it the book of Isaiah?
Yeah.
That the same book is exactly the same as, like, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
If you just imagine the sheer number of illiterate people, the sheer number of days that have to go by where people are telling the story exactly the same, and that it's entrusted in the hands of these very few people that are so dedicated to it that they get the exact words right 1,000 years later, pretty bananas.
Well, I mean, that is kind of the crazy thing about Christianity, where you have this Jewish itinerant guy who's walking around first century Roman occupied Judea. He's making some pretty audacious claims to be God himself, and then he predicts his own death and resurrection. And then his disciples they think it's over. Like, they're like, he's dead, we're done.
Yeah.
And then they go from 11, scared men, because Judas commits suicide, scared men in an upper room, to completely overhauling the Roman world in only a couple hundred years, because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like,
but my thing is that they knew from the Old Testament, it was already prophesied, but he was prophesied by name that he would come. So even, John the Baptist, he was Jesus' cousin. He was still he was blessed too. So everyone knew that he was coming. So maybe his disciple, everybody had heard about him in that time in the region, that knew that this Savior was born, right? So I don't understand. I don't get this part.
Like, there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think, so as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that
you have to, come on, that's arrogant to think that there's not something else. Like, this is just it. This whole world, it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. Like, if you even look at it from a scientific perspective, like, this stuff is matter. Like, basically, we should be going through this table. Like, and nothing makes sense. Our hand should go through everything, because it's just matter. Like, your body, your physical makeup, nothing makes sense. Like, if you look at it, but we just accept it, like, because it is what it is, because we live in this reality. It's crazy. Like,
that to I think exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on for. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well, if you
see him,
how many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of...
And he had that I think about Thomas, too. He was a skeptic. Who's, his own follower is still a skeptic. He said, I'm not going to believe it until I put your hands in his nails and everything. And Jesus came to him and he said, now place your hands in there and in my side. So, I mean, you're going to have skeptics even in your own group. So you got 400 people that saw him. Dude, come on, man. It's logic. Like, dude, seriously.
Or the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents. He says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus's ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you think it's possible that he didn't die? And do you think it's possible that they thought he was dead? Because that does happen.
Joe.
There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life. It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that. And this guy comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion. And we know
brutal.
that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast a doubt on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate, because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards and talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity. So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of, the earliest depiction of Jesus on the cross is called the Alexamenos Graphido. And it's probably from the end of the 1st century. And it's it depicts an individual with their arms raised in an act of worship, worshiping a man with a donkey's head who's being crucified. Whoa. And right beside it, it says Alexamenos worships his God in Greek. Whoa. And it's mocking, right? Because crucifixion was for the lowest of the low. It was for like slaves. In fact, if you were a Roman citizen, you were banned from being crucified.
Who was it that got crucified upside down?
Peter.
Why? Was it because like regular crucifixion wasn't good enough for him, or what was he didn't deserve it because Christ had gone through it?
Well, so the story is that they say we're going to crucify you, and he says it's like too big of an honor to die like my Lord, and they say, well, we can fix that.
Oh, jeez.
They all died horrible deaths. Like one was boiled alive, the other skinned alive. It's like, come on.
Shut your mouth, buddy.
Listen, the Romans were pretty brutal.
Oh yeah.
But this is why we know, like we have. It's interesting. We know a lot about crucifixion, but crucifixion was seen as so disgusting. I believe it was Cicero who said that like the word crucifixion shouldn't even be on a Roman man's lips. Wow. I mean, the word excruciating,
right.
Ex is off of in Latin, and crus, off the cross. So that's where we get that word, is because this was designed to humiliate, and it was designed to be as painful as possible. There's actually a really
Anyway, that's some of the thing. I'll put the link down in the description. I'm sure you probably already watched it, but it's that's very amazing. And then there's a lot of other stuff that they get into that is just it's an amazing topic. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this. Watch the video and check it out. Link down below.